Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so happy that I'm speaking after Rachel because I have another mic. Oh, so happy to be here and so very anxious to be here, and I would like to take a moment to honor my anxiety, actually, because what you're seeing now is one of my dreams that came true. And I want to thank Christian for this moment, because I really wanted to be on this stage, as I know how important are the topics that we're discussing here, and I know that each one of us can make a change. Because one thing that I know from psychology is that if I change one behavior, by changing my behavior, it will impact 3 other people around me. So if we leave after these 2 days with one idea and one change, it will not be only for 550 people, but more than that. So I want to honor also this moment that you offer us the opportunity to maybe say with you in these new ideas that you're gathering and these new changes that you might make after these 2 days. So, my presentation is about the space between us. As Ioana said, I'm a psychotherapist. I work with people for almost 20 years. And my major paradigm changed, I think, 10 years ago, when if I can have my presentation, please. When I realized, I have my presentation there. Thank you. When I realized the fact that it's not enough to work with individuals, but it's very, very important to work with relationships. What we know from evolutionary psychology is the fact that we cannot survive if we are not together. And what I know from relational psychology is that connection means existence. We know that we exist because we have other people around us. But unfortunately, what studies say during these days is that we live in an epidemic of loneliness because we don't feel safe with each other, because we lost this connection with each other. So we don't only live in loneliness, but we don't know how we can live happily. So as I said earlier, the shift of paradigm began 10 years ago, when I realized that it's not enough to work in an individual perspective. Because the individual perspective says that our problems lie within ourselves. The relational perspective says that our problems with each other lie in the space between us. So it's not enough to address what's happening inside. We also have to address what's happening between us. And I think we live days that we need to address this space between. Otherwise, bad things can happen. So it's not about choosing between ourselves and others, but about having this ability to navigate between the inner world and the space between, to navigate between what's inside, the within space, and the between space. We live in this culture that puts so much emphasis on ourselves. You as an individual have to be okay in order to enter a relationship. This is one of the biggest myths in psychology. Because we are born in relationships, we get hurt in relationships, but we also heal in our relationships. So it's not enough to work with ourselves. We also have to work on the space between us. But what do we need in order to be able to pendulate between these 2 worlds? We need safety. We need safety inside of us, but also safety in the space between. But what we know is that our inner world is created by what's happening outside. So the content of the interior is the experience of the exterior. If we don't feel safe outside, it's very difficult to feel safe inside. If we were not raised in a safe environment, it's very difficult to feel safe inside. So many decisions that we take in our lives is because we don't know what safety means. But we really want that safety. We're longing for that safety. So this is what a relationship can bring, this feeling of safety inside of us. But for that we need to understand the between space. And we need to understand how we work as systems, as communities. So life is lived in the space between, and this space between populates the space within. This is one of my favorite quotes in relational therapy. But what is the most important prerequisite of safety? Belonging. This is one of my favorite words. Because what I know is that we don't feel that we belong. And this is hurtful. And when we don't feel that we belong, fear appears. Because we don't know if there will be someone with us in our pain, in our suffering. Not only to defend us, but also to stay with us in our suffering. This is one of the most important needs when it comes to emotions. To know that we are not alone when we suffer. That we have someone there with us to stay with our pain, to listen to our pain, to accept our pain. So belonging is one of the most important things that we need to learn. What we know from studies is that what happens when we feel that we belong impacts our whole nervous system. It impacts our emotions. When we feel that we belong, we fall in love. And we feel that we belong when we fall in love. We support each other. We have social interactions. But when we don't feel that we belong, we feel exclusion. We feel rejected. We feel anxiety and loneliness. Then, belonging also impacts the cognitive system. Because our brain works in system. We know everything that we know because we connect information. So our whole system knows how to work together, how to put information together in order to extract a conclusion. So this lies within us, this belonging lies in ourselves. We just need to activate it. Because we know what belonging means from an emotional perspective, from a cognitive perspective, but also from a somatic perspective. One of the studies that I really, really like is the one that Gottman Institute did on the impact of healthy relationships on humans. And what they know, what they said, is that people that perceive their own relationships as being healthy, we do not evaluate what healthy means. They perceive as their relationship, as having healthy relationships. They say that they not only have a positive impact on their mental health and physical health, but they live longer, with 8 years longer than people that don't perceive their relationships as being healthy. Recent studies that they did show us that they don't live with 8 years longer, but 15, because you know that people that live in healthy relationships are still alive. So studies change, data change. So it seems that this feeling of belonging not only impacts the way we perceive life, but also our physical health and our lifespan. We live longer and healthier if we invest time, energy, resources in our relationships and in this feeling of belonging. Oh well, but that's not easy, right? Because when we don't feel safe, when we don't feel that we belong, we also create different traits, we create different coping mechanisms, and different adaptations in relationships. Can you give me some examples on this? An example of an adaptation, a coping mechanism when I don't feel safe, when you don't feel safe. I tell you what I do when I don't feel safe. Isolation and avoidance, this is me. I have this tendency, when I don't feel safe, I have this tendency to avoid communication, to avoid sharing what's happening inside, because I don't feel safe to do it. In other moments, maybe in professional environments, my tendency is to stay in front and say what I'm thinking, but I'm mostly rational. So another tendency, another coping mechanism is to rationalize. I know best. I know the solution. I know what we have to do. Other coping mechanisms? Fighting. How fighting looks in relationships. Of course, physical, and that's abuse, but what other type of fighting in relationships do we use? Gaslighting. Passive-aggressive. When we don't feel safe, we act in different ways with this idea that's an illusion, that by doing this, 69, that by doing this, we will create a safe space around us. But what does this do? It creates unsafety. So our mechanisms contribute to our own happiness and the feeling that we don't belong. Does this make sense? We call these mechanisms sensitivities. Actually, Ken Hoffman from Circle of Security calls them sensitivities. So what he says, of course, in order to research all these inner experiences that we have, we need categories. This is what science does. Of course, that we just move from one category to another, and inside of us we have a mix of these three categories that I'm going to present. But when we don't feel safe, we mainly use one of these three categories that Ken Hoffman studied. So one reaction that we might have is this esteem sensitivity. When we don't feel safe, we have this tendency, some of us, we have this tendency to stay in the middle of the room. Just imagine that square is a space that we share. So we're just two people that don't feel safe with each other. And when I don't feel safe, I have this tendency to stay in the middle of this relational space and tell you what I know. And I know best, and you just have to listen to what I'm saying. Because my opinion is the right one. So I have this superior attitude. I don't like criticism, so you might just shut up. Because your opinion doesn't count. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but just try to see how this feels inside of you. And professionally speaking, when I don't feel safe, I'm esteem sensitive. That's why I'm here on this stage today. Because I trained so much to say that my opinion counts. Another way of reacting when we don't feel safe, or another sensitivity, is safety sensitivity. You see, esteem sensitivity is in the middle of the relational space. I know best. Safety sensitivity is in a corner. I don't feel safe in this relationship, so I have these cognitive mechanisms that say, we are not safe, you're going to hurt me. I don't like this space. The best thing that I can do is not do anything. I will just shut up and stay here, and this will end. So I'm just waiting for that end, not saying anything and avoiding everything. And then we have separation sensitivity. If in this first sensitivity, esteem sensitivity, the fear is that I will not count, I'm not important for you. This safety sensitivity means that I don't feel safe, and relationships are abusive and dangerous. Here, the main belief is that I will lose my relationships. You will abandon me. You will not like me. I'm not useful. So what I do, I occupy all the space and the outer space of our relationship and come back being chaotic emotionally and having these intense reactions when I have this belief that maybe it's not rational, that you're going to leave me, that I'm not important to you. And I'm going to do everything for you in order to stay, because I don't want to lose you. I'm not that important. You are important. And if you feel safe, then I will feel safe. Does this make sense? These people have to live together. And now, it seems that we have a problem. But it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. Because each reaction makes sense, and each reaction is important. Think about the workplace. We need someone that takes responsibility for what's happening. We need an esteem sensitive that says, I have a plan. I know how we should do things. Just trust me. We need someone that implements the plan, that safety sensitivity. That's that person in meetings that last for 3 hours and just they roll their eyes and say, okay, do we really work here, or we should just go and work? Stop talking. An esteem sensitive might talk for 3 hours. I know. And we need separation sensitivity, because someone with this sensitivity is the connector. This person pays attention to each one of us, knows what's important for each one of us. So the problem that we have is not that we use these mechanisms. It's the fact that we do not invest in the safe space in order to understand that we don't have to use always these reactions. When we will know that we live in a safe space, I know that having this sensitivity is an opportunity to grow for myself and for others. But when I don't feel safe, this reaction, this sensitivity, is a defense mechanism. So the problem is not how we react. The problem is the fact that we don't pay attention to the space between in order to use our reactions as opportunities to grow as a community. And I'll explain later why this happens. Now is later. So what happens inside of us when frustration appears and we react so different? Well, in relational psychology, we have this mechanism that I really, really love, and I'll explain it. So frustration happens. We discuss on something, we have a problem that we have to solve, and we are a group of people, and all those mechanisms activate because we don't feel safe in this community. So this creates frustration. The first thing that happens after frustration is the fact that we lose connection. So we move from connection to defending ourselves as individual. We move from the relational perspective to the individual perspective. After we lose connection, the first thing that our nervous system feels is anxiety. Why? We know it from evolutionary psychology. We are born in connection. And what relational psychology says is that we are connection. We don't learn how to connect. We know connection from the beginning of our lives. And when we are in this difficult situation in our group, we feel anxiety because we feel that we lose one of the most important survival mechanisms, being together. So, of course, when we feel anxiety, defense mechanisms activate. We know those defense mechanisms, and I'm sure that each one of us just could say that, oh, I'm that one, or I'm that one, and my husband is that one, and my friend is that one. You did this exercise. So after these defense mechanisms activate, the fifth mechanism is self-absorption. My problem is bigger than yours. My emotions are bigger than yours. I'm suffering more than you suffer. And then this mechanism creates emotional symbiosis. You know what emotional symbiosis is? No. Emotional symbiosis means that my idea is the correct one, the only one, and I have to find people that have the same idea as I have. And we have this illusion that if we think the same way, we're safer together. So this is emotional symbiosis. We gather around an idea, and we think that if we just invest in this idea, and we all believe in this idea, then we will be better together, greater together. Can you think about at least one moment in history when this happened? Yeah. I don't want to say this, but I'm afraid that we are on the verge of doing this again. This emotional symbiotic environment, when we gather around the same idea and we think that you are wrong and I am right. And then, when we think that we are right, in order to be able to stick with this idea, we have to do something that's really, really painful. We have to lose empathy. And we are losing empathy when we get stuck into our ideas and into our heads and convincing each other that our perspective is the right one. And then we go to objectification of others. For things to be well, you have to change your behavior. Because I have the correct answer, I'm okay, you have to do something different. So I'm just passing responsibility. And I have someone to blame if things are not going in the right direction. So this is the mechanism that we keep repeating in ourselves, but also in our communities. Just try to pay attention to these reactions. You know where you can pay attention to this reaction in your couple life? We're doing this over and over again in our relational life. What I know from psychology, because I try to analyze this perspective from a different angle. And one thing that I asked myself is, okay, we have all these mechanisms and we don't feel that we belong and we invest in our ideas and then we don't feel safe because I think that you are wrong and I am right and all those things. And I just try to see, okay, but what do happy people do? What do the people that have this belief, it's a belief, again, self-perceived happiness. We don't know if they are really happy. If we're going to look to their lives, we're going to say, oh my God, is this happiness? I don't want that happiness. But for them, this is happiness. And it's a large study that was done a few years ago. And they discovered, they analyzed thousands of people. And they asked, I think they were in their 70s, so the third part of their lives. And they asked these people, do you think you lived a happy life? And they said they had these binary answers, yes and no. And they picked the people that said yes. And they interviewed them and tried to see what they did during their life in order to live happy lives. And they found these three categories that these people invested in. Intimacy. People that say that had a happy life said also that they invested in their relationships. They didn't take them for granted. They knew that we have to take care of our relationships in order for us to be well and to live a happy life. Then they have this spirituality category. They invested in their spirituality. And when I analyzed what did they meant with spirituality, I found out that it was not only from a religious perspective, but it was about personal development. This is what they said in this study, that being spiritual means also investing in our development. Knowledge is power. Reading is power. Even if it seems dangerous, as I said, as I've seen from yesterday. And another thing that they did is this aspect of generativity. So this is a legacy, but not a financial one, but a legacy that involves values and meaning. So people that said that they lived a happy life, they also invested in their sense of living. Why am I here? What do I want other people to say about me, about my life, about my experience? And they not only had these values and these beliefs about themselves, the world, and others, but they had behaviors that were attuned with these values. So see, people that lived happy lives also invested in their relationships and in the space between, more than in other things. It's not about correction, but about connection. It's not about deciding who's right or wrong, but it's about creating a space where we can live together. So, what do we need to build this safety, connection, and belonging? Accepting differences, very hard to do. Because I have to stay in the safe room, in the safe space, with people that have different opinions. And I have to accept, even if I don't approve. Accepting is not about approving. Accepting is about being respectful to what you're saying. But it's difficult to be done when we don't feel safe. Then, observing our contribution. And the main question here is, how do I contribute to my own suffering? Because it's easy to objectify the other. It's easy to say that you have to change your behavior in order for me to be happy or to be safe. You know, we have this in personal relationship. You should know what I need if you love me enough. But I have to see, I have to observe, how do I contribute to my own unhappiness and to my own unsafety? And then this difficult conversation part. I know you remember that I said I'm an avoidant. So this is my biggest struggle. I can accept differences. I can observe how I contribute, but it's so difficult to stay in difficult conversations because I'm an esteem sensitive sometimes, and I really want you to understand that I am right. And then we need to think systemically. We need to understand that our behavior impacts at least 3 people around us. When we think systemically, we will see that if 10 people from this room leaves the room, the energy will not be the same. If we have an opinion about something and we have an aggressive behavior, the energy will not be the same. It's not about what we say, it's about how we say things. It's not about our opinion, it's about how we share our opinion. And one thing that I really, really like from relational psychology is that we are all connected. And everybody makes sense, even if we can't see it yet. Each story makes sense, even if we can't see the meaning of that story. Each pain makes sense, even if we can't see that pain. And we only see the reaction. And when we will be able to see this, then we will move the focus from the rupture to repair. Because this is what healthy relationships means. Being able to move the attention from the hurt, from the pain, to this question, how can we repair this? Because this might be more helpful than staying and sticking with our pain and with showing and moving responsibility to the other. And at the end of my presentation, I want to invite you to maybe just follow my voice. And it's not a meditation exercise, don't worry. But I really want you to put your feet on the ground and just inhale and exhale. And I'm going to read something. It's a quote that I received, 71. It's a quote that I received from a friend of mine. And it's one of my favorite quotes in the world. I'm going to read something, so just look in a specific point, or maybe if you're okay with that, just close your eyes. And while you're listening to what I'm saying, just think about your need to belong and how belonging feels for you. And what's your contribution into this world? Belonging is a circle that embraces everything. If we reject it, we damage our nature. The word belonging holds together the two fundamental aspects of life, being and longing. The longing of our being and the being of our longing. Belonging is the heart and warmth of intimacy. When we deny it, we grow cold and empty. Our life's journey is the task of refining our belonging so that it may become a more true, loving, good, and free. True belonging comes from within. It strives for a harmony between the outer forms of belonging and the inner music of the soul. We seem to have forgotten the true depth and spiritual nature of intimate belonging. Our bodies know that they belong. It is our minds that make our lives so homeless. John O'Donohue, Eternal Echoes. Thank you.